What I can say is that the kinds of policies that people have been looking at and the focus on the literature, for example, there is lots of talk about policies that might lead firms to try to avoid taxation, for instance, high labor taxes. As an example, I did the following exercise with Andy Neumeyer for Argentina. If you take labor taxes are approximately 30% in Argentina. And now there's a large fraction of employment that is in informal firms, and that this is the way we measure it in the data is precisely these are employer sort of or workers that are not receiving a series of benefits, and therefore we think that these are firms that are not paying these labor taxes. So that distortion, which is having a large number of workers that are not allocated to the right firms because of the impact of these the unequal treatment through this taxation of different firms, it turns out that has a sizable effect on the population in terms of where they work and the size distribution of firms and so on. But when we look at aggregate TFP, it translates into a 2.5% reduction in aggregate TFP. Now, from like a public finance perspective, that is a big number, and 2.5% of TFP represents an important amount of welfare. Now, from the perspective of development economics, the gap in TFP across countries, if we could take the highest decile to the lowest decile, is 7-to-1. So, 25% against this 700% doesn't look very large. Other policies of that sort that people have looked at, like there are countries like France has exemptions on taxes on labor for firms that are below 50 workers. The data shows that in fact it's very clear, because when you look at the distribution of the size distribution of firms, you find that those firms that are there's a spike at 49, sort of representing how this policy is inducing firms to hire less people than they would want to hire in order to be able to take advantage of these tax exemptions. Now, a paper by Gorio and Royce that looks at that data and documents beautifully this fact also looks at the impact of this misallocation in terms of aggregate TFP, and they find like 0.3% effect, a very, very, very tiny effect. So what I would say is a challenge in labor market policies is to find the culprit of those policies that might be responsible for very sort of high degrees of misallocation, consequently very high losses of TFP in the aggregate.